It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's Feedback Friday, and it has been a very busy, very cold, very snowy week for me. Hello at the end of this week. If I seem a little punchy today, it's because I've been on Zoom calls all day. Like it wasn't specifically Zoom. There's like 3 different messenger services. Anyway, it's been a week, and it's been a week. Holy cow! We cannot keep up with what's going on. I mean, Microsoft is buying Activision, and we're seeing how that shakes out. And I'll do a quick top line on that, just because I don't want to miss it. But that is either the most genius bargain basement fire sale acquisition ever, because they swooped in when Activision was at a low point and undervalued, or it's going to be a colossal disaster because they just purchased a bunch of IPs that are way past their prime, and nothing that is sort of buildable, right? Because in order to make their investment back, they have to make more than $67 billion, which is what they paid for it. So, we're not going to know which is which for a while, because we don't know just how bad the situation at Activision is. But that is my take on the whole Activision thing with Microsoft. It is the end of an era. I mean, Activision was one of the big 3 third-party publishers. It's Activision, EA, and Ubi. And, so Activision being acquired by Microsoft is big. It is big stuff. It is not, this is up there with Sega bowing out of the console market and just becoming a software developer, right? We're talking about that. So I'll leave that there. I'll move on to your commentary. You know what's coming now. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. The patrons got some hopefully heartwarming videos of my cat Momo recovering from dental surgery this week. This was a really eventful week, and so I've sort of picked the most popular comments in terms of repetition that I saw. I did not have time to get through nearly all the comments this week. I apologize. It was just so nuts. I was doing a bunch of medical stuff this week, thinking, hey, January, it's like this slow gear up getting back into things after the holidays. So now's a really good time to bang out some medical stuff. Boy, was I freaking wrong. But getting on the G4 video, there were a lot of comments about, the host attacking the audience and attacking gamers and all that stuff. And I wanted to just provide a bit of background on that, sort of the corporate structure of what's going on there. Apparently, G4 is now owned by NBC. It is an online-only service. The reason my ears pricked up when somebody told me that G4 is owned by NBC is because NBC owns Peacock, which is a streaming service which is building itself up from, TV shows that air on NBC, but also original news programming with a very left-wing bent. So we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the audience for G4 now? Is it the standard gamer audience from back in the day? Or is it this new left-leaning political audience who plays a few video games? I will say that I think, assuming a lot of people from a lot of different political persuasions play video games. Gamers, from all the data I have seen, tend to lean center left. So but we know that, the primary demo for AAA video games, which is, what stuff, Attack of the Show is more a pop culture show. So maybe that's what they're thinking. Maybe they brought back Attack of the Show for that reason, because they're going to do like Marvel movies and stuff like that. If so, all right. If they're going to do a left-leaning bent and well, a solidly left-wing bent. I mean, Zerlina Maxwell has a show on Peacock, and she's very left. So that, I mean, that gives you a sense of where they're at, like where their target is. So if they're just doing a pop culture show with, you know, a very left-leaning prism, well, it explains why that host went on that possibly scripted rant about gamers, right? It's unfortunate. It's wrong-headed. It's short-sighted. I just wanted to provide some of the perspective about why they might be doing what they're doing. I think it's a mistake. I think that I am so immune to these sort of broadside attacks against people, against groups of people that I happen to belong to, that, you know, every so often I need refreshers that for the average person, it still hurts. I'm so numb. I'm so beyond beaten up by that phenomenon. I mean, let's face it, if they're going to redesign a character, it's likely going to be the one that looks like me, right? Because the minute a character is a woman, they want to do all the all the swaps. So they have to be a person of color and maybe bisexual or lesbian or all that stuff because, you know, they still want the white male IP that's at the top of the ticket, so to speak, you know, that the logo's attached to. And so the female character becomes a whole bunch of things. And that's just the reality. And, you know, this is what happens when you're part of a physical identity group that is very, very small. There just aren't that many gingers out there. And so we tend to get left out of a lot of conversations about identity, you know, because we're seeing, oh, you're just another white person. And, you know, talk to any ginger. It ain't that simple, but the people that talk along those lines don't care. So we fall through the cracks, and it's just a reality. And so I'm so beat up. So I just wanted to give a nod to, you know, as an empathy exercise that I hear you. I can't care anymore. You guys sort of see the characters I identify with. I like me my monsters. Maybe there's a reason for that, but you know, I'd rather just move on and say, if you're not interested in me, Attack of the Show, I'm not interested in you, and go on and do stuff that fulfill me instead of fighting people who, you know, I don't know if you've heard the term, don't get down in the mud with a pig because the pig likes it. It's that kind of mentality. Like, don't fight with someone who's spoiling for a fight. Just, that is not a criticism. That is where I'm coming from. Moving on to the Joss Whedon video. This is one of these things where I knew something was going to derail the conversation. I didn't know it was going to be something this nitpicky. And this is one of these things about communication styles and what defining of terms is and context. There were so many comments in the video about Joss Whedon, which was about many more things, about the right of prima nocte probably being a myth. That is completely irrelevant to the point I was making, which was Joss Whedon put a rape joke in a PG-13 superhero movie. That was the point. I only defined the right of prima nocte for people who don't know what it is, because the entire reason he gets that and another word I will not say on YouTube, because you start talking about gendered body parts and you get in trouble on YouTube. The reason he put that stuff in and the reason it got passed by is because people didn't know what it was. And that's part of his narcissism. He sneaks in these horrible things that are just only history nerds like me catch at the time, who also happen to be literature, we have literature backgrounds, read Chaucer, and so we know what some of these dated body part terms are. And we go, did he just do that? Most people don't know what it is. And then they find out afterwards and they enjoyed the movie because they didn't know what it was, and so they justify it after the fact. That is the manipulative shit show that was Joss Whedon. So whether Prima Nocte was a myth or not doesn't change the fact that he invoked it as a rape joke completely unnecessarily. It was just stupid and juvenile and so very him. And one of the things I heard from insiders about Joss Whedon is the part of the reason he got away with what he did for so long is that he was really good at getting the people who worked for him or the people who worked with him to fight each other. We see that with the whole Ray Fisher thing, with him going after, what's his name, Walter Hamada and Jeff Johns. He's very good at, and I'm not going to name my sources here for obvious reasons, but what I was told is he likes to get people fighting each other because it makes him feel big. And because everybody was fighting each other, there wasn't enough of a united front behind this guy. And I share that only because, I know people in this channel care. I know people on other channels I guest on, they don't find this stuff funny, and they don't want predatory content. They don't want, they want superhero movies to be about, okay, we get a fun villain that chooses scenery, but we want the good guys to win, right? And we don't want throwaway references to things that are very gross and upsetting, because we see superheroes to take ourselves away from our troubles and, okay, maybe prop up our just world fallacy some, but we want to believe that good guys can win eventually. And so we don't want that stuff polluting the purity of, it's not escapism, it's soul food in a way. It may be dumb and disposable in a lot of ways, and there's an overuse of slow-mo. Please don't say I'm calling superhero movies dumb. Look at my background. I'm doing a counter argument here. Even if all the bad shit that people say about this stuff is true, there's still this fact that I am hearing more and more and more and more of the fans of this stuff don't like certain things that keep putting in this stuff. There's got to be a reason for that. And, there are certain fights I won't bother with. There are certain fights I will pick. And this is one of those fights, because when especially comics, like actual floppy comics, because it's such a relatively small market, when that industry is not listening to various segments of its audience, and they're quite content to have those sections of its audience just brawling against each other on the internet, that's the sign of a fairly unhealthy industry. I'm going to leave that there just as an observation. On the Wellness Wednesday video that sort of tied in to the Joss Whedon thing about using high school as an excuse for, current bad behavior. It's not healthy to still be defining yourself from high school when you're in your 30s through your 50s, Joss Whedon. There was some really interesting feedback from that. A general comment, I want to be really careful here because one person actually put in a comment, please don't direct quote this, and I respect that. It happened to overlap with multiple other comments, so I'm just saying to that commenter, like, no, I am not ignoring your wishes. There's just overlap. Comments like, people keep pulling me back into high school. The reason that people got stuck in a high school mentality is that was where conformity was enforced. And this idea of being told growing up, they'll like you for you, and that not being true. All this stuff sort of centers around high school. And this happened to come in a week that I hadn't seen this when I recorded Well this Wednesday, but the Superman and Lois I watched last night was Superman talking to Clark Kent talking to his two teenage boys about sex, and it was glorious and awkward and beautiful. And there was this moment where John Kent was totally ignoring his father and hanging on every word his girlfriend said, and Clark Kent just in the background does this "why God why" gesture, and it was just so beautiful to see Superman like totally flustered as a dad, and then go out and like save the crew of like a submarine, and then go back and just be totally overwhelmed and flustered from being a dad. Quality programming on Superman and Lois. But it's still, like every CW show, a show centered somewhat in a high school mentality, even when it's Batwoman and none of those people are in high school anymore. But the thing that's nice about Superman and Lois is they do have the parents, they do have the kids, so they can get that high school quotient and still be a show that doesn't make me lose brain cells. One commenter said, I thought this was beautiful, "We need to re-examine the whole system of high school in light of how many people it leaves with lifelong psychological problems." I admit, every time I watch Cobra Kai, I'm like, this is probably somewhat exaggerated, but probably not as exaggerated as I want it to be. And that makes me very worried, because she was messed up, man. But this whole thing about eventually you'll find your people, or just be yourself, they'll like you for you. The thing, I mean, people who've watched this channel for a while know I've been canceled like 4 times in my life. I mean, literally, I was on a television show that got canceled. It eventually happens to all of us when you're in entertainment. Literally canceled, not figuratively. But then, there was the right trying to bury me online just because of dumb identity politics, and then the left deciding that because I didn't get just stupid and bitter and lash out at everybody because the actions of a relative few, then they had to cancel me. And it sort of went back and forth. Some partisan influencer just decides every so often to take a crack at me, and things get exciting for about a week, sometimes longer. I feel you on that they'll like you for you thing. There is some truth to be yourself. Eventually you will find people who will like you for you. There's a bunch of things that cuts out in a, a reductive bumper sticker kind of way. In that, if you're not yourself, then yeah, nobody will like you because they don't know you, right? But there's going to be a lot of people who don't like you, and a lot of people who are going to like actively try to mess you up. And that's the part they don't tell you when they give you that platitude. The other big part of be yourself, people will like you for you, is you have to like you before anybody else will like you. And that is a journey. And it's sort of excuse me, my eyes are super gooey. That's sort of one of those things of, well, if nobody likes me, how do I learn to like myself? And yeah, there is learned behaviors, and the reality is that some people in the world are very cruel. And because of the way people communicate now, online, especially with COVID, the likelihood that you are going to run into one of these truly awful bullies at some point is much greater. But then it's the question of what narrative do you tell yourself about that encounter with the bully? You know, you notice I said, I don't go, I was harassed and this. I was like, things got loud for a couple of weeks. And I'm like I said about, the whole attacking the audience thing, I'm just so over it by this point. Just so over it. It really is so not worth the brain cells. But I had to go after wave after wave after wave after wave of that shit to get there. You know what? The first 2 or 3 sucked and were terrifying. They were. And that was even after all the shit kickings I took as a TV personality. The online dog piles are its own thing. It's a mood. And the truth is that if various social media providers really wanted to prevent that stuff, they could. They could set different things on people with, under a certain follower count, or, there are things they could use. There are technologies they could use to allow people to comment on high profile personalities or people who are in the public interest, and still prevent regular people who just dare to have an opinion on YouTube or Twitter or Facebook or TikTok or whatever from getting, from getting dogpiled and made miserable. Right? There are ways. They don't care because they're monetizing this shit. They're monetizing the clicks. If somebody hate clicks on a video, they get the same amount of money as if somebody like clicks on a video, right? And YouTube and Facebook take up between the two of them, between Google and Facebook, they take up 90% of online advertising. There's a reason these things are the way they are. Now, online is not life. Life is not online. It's really hard right now to meet people not online. And it's harder in certain areas than others for various reasons. Population density, access to gathering places, what COVID's like in your area, what the lockdown conditions are. I mean, indoor dining is still shut down here right now. And we're in a fucking deep freeze. And we're still digging out from a snowstorm, I think Canadians sort of go through these periods. Well, between December and March, I ain't doing much. And so we become like patio in the summer and into fall. But I will stand by the idea that you have to be yourself for anybody to like you for you. That's not the same as just be yourself. People will like you for you. No one will like you for you if you are not yourself, because then you're not showing somebody your authentic self, so they can't like it. They haven't seen it, right? That's fact. Does that mean you shouldn't work on parts of yourself? No. If you want to work on parts of yourself, you go right ahead. I think that's good. That's a sign of a healthy person who wants to constantly improve. But you really do need that internal validation. Do it for you. Do it because it's something that makes you proud, not because of the reactions you're going to get from other people, because holy shit, there are a lot of assholes out there. But it's that other element of you have to like you, or not only will other people not like you if you don't like yourself, but it won't matter if people like you if you don't like yourself. You will never feel comfort from other people liking you if you don't like yourself. And that's where guys like Joss Whedon come from. That's where rants from that host on G4 come from. Like when people feel like they have to attack the world and hurt and use other people to get attention or status or money or revenge because hot girls wouldn't date them in high school, they don't like themselves. And no matter, Joss Whedon is a shining example of no matter how much success he achieved, no matter how much money he made, no matter how many accolades he racked up, he could not stop treating other people like shit, because he never felt good. He never felt accepted. He never felt like it was enough. He never felt that sense of confidence because he does not like himself. And so he keeps having to tear people down and lie about people and claim Ray Fisher's just a bad actor and Gal Gadot doesn't speak English fluently and all this shit, which nobody's buying. Well, I mean, some people may buy the Ray Fisher thing because they didn't watch the Snyder Cut, but anybody who saw the Snyder Cut was like, you know, is he Anthony Hopkins? You know, is he even Chadwick Boseman? Rest in peace. No, but it wasn't a bad performance. There is an in between like not good performance and, you know, Oscar worthy, and it was perfectly good for the job he had. I really liked the Cyborg story in the Snyder Cut. I thought it was a mistake to take it out. It gave a heart and a character arc to a film whose theatrical release was a hot fucking mess with a farmhouse in the middle of it. And so, you know, he's just not telling the truth. And he may be self-deluded. He may convince himself of this nonsense. So he just feels more victimized and more wounded when people point out that what he's saying is just provably false. Anybody who's seen Gal Gadot do a media tour, like a media blitz, knows her English is better than, you know, the vast majority of Israelis speak fluent English. And she's not just an Israeli. She's been somebody who's been working in Hollywood for quite some time. That was just stupid and insulting and sort of the tangible detail that makes everybody go, oh, come on. And when somebody does something that brazen, you automatically go back and start questioning everything else they've said because it's just so ridiculous. And if he was doing something other than trying to manipulate the narrative, he'd recognize that. But he is so deep in, you know, self-loathing, he ain't there. He can't do that. And isn't that something that, you know, the guy who made 2 freaking Avengers movies doesn't like himself? Imagine the hell that is. Now, I'm not asking anybody to feel sorry for him because he's a freaking dirtbag. But it's a cautionary tale, right? There are so many people who have so much success who just blow it all up because they're miserable. And they're miserable because they don't like themselves. Because anybody else would be, shit, man, I made $2 billion movies. I am set for life. Daniel Radcliffe, meanwhile, is playing like Weird Al Yankovic in a biopic. If you've seen the stuff Elijah Wood's done, like, he just does weird shit now. Because they're like, I was Harry Potter. I was Frodo. I'm fucking set for life. I'm going to do weird shit. Because you know what? I can. Freedom. You know? That's a happy person. That's a person who's settled in themselves. That's a person who doesn't have anything to prove and is going to take the opportunity to do interesting projects, have fun, and grow as a human being, as a talent. They don't have to keep doing horrible things to people to fill a hole inside them that will never be filled. So it's important, and that's no slight to anybody that made those comments. I'm responding to the comments because I thought they had merit. I just want to provide some nuance to that stuff. And I mean, we can continue dialogues on that stuff. You know, the crab in the bucket phenomenon and that very real thing that people try to pull you down whenever you try to improve yourself. But I just wanted to provide that nuance for interest's sake. Okay? Okay, so have a good weekend, everybody. Oh, yeah, Patreon. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeettaK. Thanks for watching.